Hey everyone, what is up? My name is Laura Ann, and I am here to share just simply a reflection from today. I had the chance to just really sit at my dining room table and get further into the Word. So, we're going to go ahead and dive in on what I gathered from Job today because I finished the whole entire chapter of Esther yesterday, and honestly, y'all, that was pretty incredible to read. I've honestly never read the whole entire chapter of Esther all the way through, so it was very interesting to me. It was just honestly a great um a great chapter in the Bible. So let's go ahead and dive into what I gathered from. So, as you're following along, I am reading out of the NIV Leadership Bible, the John Maxwell, and then I'm also reading out of the Thrive Women's Devotional Bible, the NLT version. And also, I have my notes from this morning, and I actually wrote a lot. So, today was a good day. Sometimes I only write like one page. Some days I can write two or three. It just kind of depends on what I get from it. And so, let me get my notes up here like this. I'm going to be kind of looking back and forth because, again, I don't always share my journal entries with you all, but I want to share this one because we're in Job. And when I read, and again, I'm reading Job 2 for the very first time as well. So again, this is just reflections from me and what I gathered from it. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn to Job really quick. Oh, okay. I'm live. Okay. So I read all the way actually through chapter 3 today too. So I'm actually going to be reflecting on chapter 2 and chapter 3 as well, and then I'm going to be kind of back and forth too. Because I also took some digital notes as well today, and I normally, like I said, y'all don't normally get to be able to do this more in depth of things. So we're gonna go ahead and um dive in because when I was reading Job chapter 1, it like really like was like shocking to me, all the things that he went through. Um but when reading Job chapter 2, I quickly realized that Job went through in today's time as we call hell and back. And when we face horrible things, when Job had literally everything taken away from him, um and then we follow into, well, that was, he got everything pretty much taken away from him in chapter 1. And his kids died, and then we follow in chapter 2, and he was presented with terrible boils from head to foot. And when I think of boils on the skin, I think of like fluid filled nodules on the skin. I mean, real big, painful, probably not great to the eye to see, and probably painful to touch. And so that was pretty interesting to me because, I know for me, like um if I have acne on my face, or if I have, a zit, I'm like, I'm picking at it, or I'm, putting medicine on it for it to go away, or I'm putting a pimple patch on it, or, looking at my cleansers and all these things, like all the resources that I have. And, it sometimes, some zits can be more painful than others if you pop them. But I kind of looked at it in that way in like today's time, even though it's completely different, because I know that I'm just envisioning what he even looked like. And so I think of that, when I think about the acne on the skin, I think from time to time that, that it's not really that painful for us to have acne on our skin. Um, but sometimes it is, depending on what kind it is, like if it's more cystic or, vice versa. I don't know all the terminology for that. I'm not a dermatologist. But um so, and I know for me, like, when I feel more confident when I have makeup on compared to no makeup. But then there's some days where I don't care. Some days I don't wear makeup, I don't cover up my acne and the scarring that I have on my face. Um and, at that time, like I was thinking, well, Job really didn't have, like, he couldn't cover it up. Like he couldn't cover up anything that he had on his skin. And, I know he was going through pain in that time. But one of the verses that really stood out to me was, and I'm looking back, so y'all, because I've got my camera on my computer too, so sometimes you'll catch me looking at myself through my computer. But it says in a verse, that Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery. Okay, let's stop there for a second. Broken pottery means that the edges are jagged, means that, one scrape against the skin maybe could cut you. I don't know, but I think that's kind of painful to vision. And as he sat among the ashes. And again, I can't imagine, I'm reading my notes. I can't imagine, for one, scraping my skin with jagged, broken pottery. Could not imagine. That itself was uncomfortable, and in the pain and anguish that Job experienced, it was too much for words. And and he still didn't talk bad or sin while he was in pain. And he had friends that, in a village of friends that came, and they did not speak. They didn't say a word. They just saw him in so much anguish and so much pain that they literally did not say a word. They were just there. They were there to comfort. And sometimes in situations, I feel like, when we have a friend, or like with me, I know, like, sometimes, like, I want to find the right words to say in certain situations, but sometimes just being there is just enough. And I feel like we kind of have to remind ourselves that if you know someone that's going through a difficult time, but you don't know what to say, maybe just being there is enough for that person. Okay. And so that was pretty interesting to reflect on, because like, sometimes, like, if someone's going through a really hard situation, um we want to say things, but maybe just saying something isn't what we need to do. We just need to be present. And so it was kind of a reminder to myself that, if one of my friends or somebody I know that's walking through, a really hard time, that I need to step up to the plate. And instead of just like trying to find the right words to say, to encourage or to motivate or to comfort, maybe just sitting there in silence is the best way. So that was just a little insight there. And then also, reading going into chapter 3 of Job, that was pretty interesting to read. um because in verse 20 it says, "Why give light in those in misery, and life to those who are bitter?" And then in verse 23 it says, "Why is life given to those with no future, those God those God has surrounded with difficulties?" And, as I'm reading my notes, and I see these verses, it just reminds me that when challenges arises in our lives, that we do in the flesh question uh why something is happening. And I feel like it's normal to feel that way. However, it's not right to do things in a sinful way. Um when you're feeling hurt or angry or sad or in pain. But I also am reminded that God's grace and mercy is so good to us. And again, sometimes, we can be at our weakest point and our lowest point in our life. And then that's when we are finally turning our life over from flesh to to God and say, I don't know what else to do, Lord. And so anyways, I just feel like Jesus is the only way to true healing, from relationships, from family trauma, from again, seek help, seek therapy. It's 2025 now, so therapy is normal. But also I feel like Jesus is the true way to healing, especially healing the heart, softening the heart, and he is the light in the darkness. Like, seek him first before seeking social media or seeking a friend to rant, or seek, or vice versa. And so I that was just kind of the reflection that I got from that, because because I mean, we're human. I mean, again, we're made out of flesh, so it is normal for us to feel this way, or and I feel like when I'm reading Job, that I keep seeing the word integrity, especially in my Bible, in the Women's Thrive devotional Bible. Um, but also too, like I'm reminded that Job lost everything: his possessions, his children, his health, his comfort, his dignity. Like, he lost everything. And his suffering became physical, and it was unbearable. And with the boils on his skin, and he sat in the ashes, he scraped his skin with broken pottery. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm like envisioning like this man sitting here on the ground by ashes, and literally scraping his skin with broken pottery. Like, that is a pain that I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like. But also, there are sorry, I had a piece of hair on my arm. It was like tickling my arm. But I do know that, like, there are some heartaches that we experience in our life, and we have to be reminded that, uh that God does heal. He does heal. And you know, when I'm reading chapter 3, and it's Job's first speech, and he's asking hard questions. Like, why is life given to those in misery? Why is light given to those surrounded by difficulty? These aren't sinful questions. These are not sinful questions. They are human ones, and some that that we have probably have said, in our own way of saying things. And when we here, I'll close my, because I'm done with my notes here. um when we are close to him, we can seek a peace that is, to me, it's hard to explain. I mean, I have a peace knowing that God is in my corner, than a peace that I've ever felt before, like, actually, like, really, getting this one-on-one relationship with him. And in a relationship, I mean, with him, is me leaning into the word more, and reflecting and writing, and listening. Like, there are some words that I don't understand in the Bible, so I'm listening. And I just feel like this chapter reminds us that God allows a space for lament, but he also calls us to trust. And we are allowed to feel pain. We are allowed to feel pain, and confusion and grief, but we are not called to do we're not called to abandon. We're not called to abandon God in the process. And I feel like, sometimes that's where we fall short, because in the times of hurting, in the times of trying, in the times of challenges, we step away. We depart. We drift away. We and again, like, I have that coping mechanism. When things get hard, I just kind of like, okay, all right, I'm going to go hide in a corner. Um but in Job, I just when we put the Lord first, even when the pain remains, there is a peace that that cannot be explained. and a love that steadies us, a light that meets us in the darkest places. And Job reminds me that Jesus is still a healer. Jesus is still the healer. He is still the light. He is still worthy of our trust. And one of the things that I'll just say is just seek him first. And when I'm reading in my Bible, it talks about walk with integrity. And it talks about how, it says, love a love letter from God. It says, "Beloved daughter, I've set you apart from me. I've chosen you to walk differently than other people in the world and total integrity. When you're tempted to do what you know in your heart is wrong, call out to me and I will strengthen you." And it talks about just, going more into that. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to keep reading about Job. There's just certain verses that just catch me, and I have to like write them down or put them in my notes in my phone, or um go into another Bible and get a different type of reflection from it, because again, I just feel like sometimes God uses me with words, and I have to, before I didn't really write things down in the very beginning of my walk, but now I'm seeing that the more and more that I am writing things, the more that I'm actually remembering. Okay. And so, but I also wanted to put this in here because I love John Maxwell and I love the leadership Bible that that John Maxwell has. And, in, it's page 589, but in Job chapter 2, verses 11 through 13, I want to just read what it says in this because I thought it was very it's good nuggets is what I like to call. And it says, "When Job's friends hear about the catastrophe, they want to help. But this time, boils have broken out all over Job's body, and his friends don't even recognize him. They feel his pain and are horrified to see a friend in such need. Merciful, they keep their mouths shut for 1 whole week. If they only had continued their silence, they sit with their friend and listen. Somehow, these friends realize an important truth. People don't lose intimacy, when they stop talking, but when they stop listening. Leaders seldom realize how much their listening empowers the other person because they are leaders. The sheer act of listening speaks volumes that even a great speech cannot communicate. Listening communicates the value of the other person and his or her thoughts, communicates love and understanding and care for their needs, communicates a desire to grow, learn, and remain teachable. So that was not my words, okay? So don't come after me. This was John Maxwell Leadership Bible. And so it was just pretty interesting to read, and I'm excited to keep digging deeper into Job. Like I said, never read it before, all the way through. So I'm excited to see what I get from it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to share with you all today. I hope y'all have a wonderful Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I am just really excited. This is my son's third Christmas. And I am really excited to just be present with my family, be present with celebrating the birth of Christ, and celebrating, honestly, just seeing what my son gets from Santa. We do both. I do believe there's magic in it. And just to keep the spark of a child's wonder, at its best. And so I'm really excited about it, and I hope y'all have a great day, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.